Permission to Mourn by Tom Zumba. A new way to do grief. This is the foreword written by Gary Zukav, who is the author of The Seat of the Soul and Spiritual Partnership. I recommend with joy Tom Zupa's exquisite, perceptive, and profound celebration of life, Permission to Mourn. Despite its title, it is actually a book about permission to live. It takes us where we all now need to go and gently, kindly shows us a path. For me, that is the path to authentic power, fulfillment, meaning, and joy. A life filled with love, a life without fear, vital, creative, and caring. In my experience, this life does not come easily, but recognizing the possibility of it, holding strongly the intention to create it, and using your every experience, including grief and loss, to guide you towards it, leads to an entirely new human experience. After a while, perhaps a long while, and perhaps even after the fact, you recognize in your own way that an ignition has occurred within you. Liftoff has happened, and you are heading towards or entering uncharted realms of meaning, fulfillment, and power. Your work is not done at this stage, but you are on your way. A new life is coming into being in you, choice by choice, and you are flying. A species wide transformation of consciousness is expanding human experience beyond the limitations of the five senses. We are becoming multisensory, non physical. Dynamics beneath appearances are becoming visible, and our roles in them too. This has never happened to our entire species, and now it is happening within a few generations. From the perspective of our evolution, a few generations are less than a heartbeat, less than an eye blink, less than a nanosecond. We sense ourselves as immortal souls and mortal personalities at the same time. We see the world as meaningful instead of random. We discover opportunities to grow spiritually wherever we look. At first, we long to believe that the universe is alive, wise, and compassionate. Then we begin to believe that it is. Then we experience that it is the path that Tom Zuba describes in Permission to Mourn takes us there. A new understanding of power as the alignment of the personality with the soul is replacing the old understanding of power as the ability to manipulate and control. Creating the new power requires emotional awareness, never suppressing, repressing, or denying an emotion. It requires choices that create consequences for which you are willing to assume responsibility. It demands commitment, courage, compassion, and consciousness communications and actions. This is the hard work that Tom Zuba reminds us so gently and often is necessary. We must choose moment to moment between love and fear. The choice to believe that you are alone, invisible, and powerless, in this case, that someone you loved dearly has been tragically taken, is a choice of fear. The choice to believe that the soul of the one you dearly love has returned home to non physical reality in a manner, place, and time of its choosing, and yet remains with you, is the choice of love. The new way to grieve requires choosing love. Emotional awareness, intention, choice, and responsibility are the tools of creating authentic power. They are also the new way to do grief. We will all create authentic power. We will all create authentic power sooner or later. It is now required for human evolution. Be gentle with yourself. You are not judged when you choose fear. You suffer the painful consequences of your choice. You're not judged when you choose love. You bloom in the blissful consequences of your choice. Permission to mourn is about becoming aware, experiencing the enormity, power, and grace of your life, and creating with love each moment. This is what we were born to do. Love, Gary Zukav. That is the foreword, and I will now go into the introduction. Hmm. I am an ordinary person. I'm just like you. As I reflect back, I realize I've lived through extraordinary circumstances and made different choices. Not at first. At first, I made the same choices most of us make. We make them consciously and subconsciously. When I noticed, however, that the choices I was making were creating pain on top of pain on top of unbearable pain, I decided to make different choices. And I did. Over and over and over again. You can too. Along the way, I discovered a new way to do grief. That's why I wrote this book, to share with you all I've learned. Shortly after our 18-month-old daughter, Erin, our firstborn, died suddenly in 1990, My wife Tracy, pronounced Trish, and I returned to work at our downtown Chicago jobs. Trish to the American Cancer Society and me to the National Office of Easter Seals. We didn't know any better. How could we? As often as possible, in those tentative, fragile first weeks, I'd leave work promptly at 5 o'clock p.m. From Lake Street, I'd walk south on Michigan Avenue until I arrived at Trish's building. Together, we'd walk to the Lake Street train and make our way home to our suburban Oak Park apartment, still quiet beyond belief and empty. So very empty. One day sticks in my mind like a Polaroid picture. Trish's colleague, our friend Sherry, pressed the down button and waited at the elevator with us. With soft, tender love, Sherry smiled gently and said, "My prayer is that the rest of your life will be uneventful and boring." I knew what she meant. My life has been anything but. 9 years later, the inexplicable, unimaginable explosiveness of Trisha's sudden death on New Year's Day 1999 was not lost on me. I had two prayers. I did not want to waste this experience, and I wanted it to be surrounded by people much wiser than me. I haven't, and I most certainly was. Less than 4 months after Trisha's death, I was telling our story to millions of people on the Oprah Winfrey Show with Gary Zukav, New York Times bestselling author of The Seat of the Soul. As I said that day to Oprah and Gary, I'm not at all surprised to be here. I'm surprised I'm here as quickly as I am. In the 15 years since Trisha's death, I have marinated in the teachings and the wisdom of a handful of ordinary people who, by the choices they've made, have lived extraordinary lives. Many of these people were introduced to me, and perhaps to you, by Oprah Winfrey on her television show. Their wisdom is woven throughout these pages and in everything I am and do. My great teachers include Debbie Ford, author of The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. You must go into the dark in order to bring forth your light. When we suppress any feeling or impulse, we're also suppressing its polar opposite. Byron Katie, author of Loving What Is. Everything happens for me, not to me. And just keep coming home to yourself. You are the one you've been waiting for. Don Miguel Ruiz, author of The Four Agreements. The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. The word is not just a sound or written symbol. The word is a force. It is the power you have to express and communicate, to think and thereby create the events of your life. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. Colin Tippin, author of Radical Forgiveness. It is only when we give ourselves permission to access our pain that our healing begins. The healing journey is essentially an emotional one. Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now. The fact is that you are resisting what is. You are making the present moment into an enemy. Iyanla Vanzant, author of Yesterday's I Cried. In the fall of 1998, while sitting in a hotel room in Washington, D.C., with the television on, I heard Iyanla say to Oprah, remind yourself over and over that I am the beloved. I am the beloved. I wrote those 4 words down on the hotel stationery and have never been the same. John E. Welshans, author of Awakening from Grief, Finding the Way Back to Joy. We are not our bodies, and our relationships don't exist in our bodies. They exist in our hearts, in our mind, in our soul. Gary Zukav, author of The Seat of the Soul. Eventually, you will come to understand that love heals everything, and love is all there is. I am grateful to each of these bright lights for the work they have done and the gifts they have given to me, to the world. When my 13-year-old son Rory died from brain cancer on February 22nd, 2005, I knew I could heal. I had done it before. I wasn't sure, however, if I had the energy and determination to do the work. Not again. Healing from the death of someone you love dearly is such hard, hard work. When Aaron died, I didn't believe there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Not this tunnel, only to find out that yes, indeed, there was a light. When Trish died 9 years later, knowing that that light at tunnel's end existed, colored that journey for me. And when Rory died, not only was I certain there was light at the end of the tunnel, but this time the tunnel itself was lit. And that made all the difference. That knowing allowed me to become the observer and the active participant in my own healing. This is the book I wish I had read after Aaron died, and after Trish died, and after Rory died. But I wasn't ready. Not then. First, I had to live it so I could write it for you. But you are ready, or you wouldn't be reading these words. You are ready to do grief a new way. My new prayer is that you will set the intention to see with new eyes, to hear with new ears, and to feel with a new heart. That you will pay more attention to your heart and less attention to your head as you read my words. That you will allow yourself to feel all of it. Throughout these pages, I offer you hope and possibility. While the darkness has purpose, it is not meant to be your forever place. There is a new way to do grief, a way rooted in hope and possibility, with the promise of a new, joy filled life. Say yes, say yes, say yes to life, to love, to you. If not now, when? Hmm. That is all for the foreword and the introduction. I'm going to now wish those listening that your heart is open and that you're already encouraged in your listening. Thank you. Again, Permission to Mourn by Tom Zuba.